Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Brass on Tap. Thank you so much for joining me live here. The reason I'm smiling and laughing because I've just been catching up with Ryan side stage there on my side stage. He was side stage last night, hence why he couldn't come. So thanks so much to all you guys out there. We've got 17 guys joining us already, which is amazing. So get the word out, guys. We do have Ryan Quigley with us tonight. He has given up his time. I think he's running on fumes. He's only got a couple of hours sleep, so we're going to drain those last couple of hours out of him, I think, with your questions. So do make sure you get your questions in as the stream goes on, because, use this time that you got Ryan on the channel and as we're chatting. Just as I did mention before, if you are new to the channel, why don't you head over to Brass on Tap YouTube page and check out the previous episodes. We've had amazing people come on. Last week I had Gary Alsbrook. I also had Bobby Shue the week before that. I've had Alan Vazzuti, Mike Lovett. There's Tom Walsh, James Copus. There's so many to name. It's not funny. Go check it out. Obviously, this is episode number 20 with Ryan Quigley. However, we can't go anywhere until we get the stream started. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, episode 20 with Ryan Quigley. This is going to be an absolute corker. Before I get him on, just a reminder, let's see whether he has a double C in him. I think it's there. So how about we get him on and ask him how he does that? Hey, Ryan, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you, man?
Not bad.
I can't remember how I used to be able to do that.
Yeah, get out. Thanks so much, Ryan, for joining us tonight. I know you're a busy guy, and it was so good. As much as it was a bit of an annoyance because we couldn't do the stream last night, and we had some people turn out, and it was great. But the greatest thing about it is you start to work again. So.
Well,
you can't.
Yeah.
Oh, exactly. So let's not. Let's focus on the positives rather than the negatives.
Definitely. Yeah, of course.
So it's so great that we've managed to reschedule and join us tonight. So the way I usually start these streams, and I think I will start them in generally like this, at least until we're out of lockdown and all the rest of it, is a lot of our guys out there do struggle at the moment. Obviously, they're still waiting for those doors to open, that phone to ring. So could you just sort of go about how you've dealt with the last year and what's been going on?
Oh, man. We've got time, haven't we? This is quite a long story.
Of course.
So, I mean, I'll go into a bit of personal stuff as well, just from my point of view, from this whole lockdown thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we had... last February, we had a little baby boy.
Oh, amazing! Born... Congratulations!
Thank you very much. But he was born a bit complicated. He was born quite premature, wow. And he was also born with a very rare condition, and that rare condition, he doesn't have an esophagus. So he was born without an esophagus, wow. Basically, which is very, very rare. Or that's not strictly speaking true. His esophagus stopped at a dead end.
Got you.
Which meant he couldn't swallow any food, and his windpipe was attached to his stomach. So it was all kind of like a really bad, communist 1950s Eastern European kind of bad wiring job from the 50s,
Yeah. Right.
So he had to get like major surgery when he was, a day old, and then we spent a month in hospital, and neonatal intensive care.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So that was like he was born on the 19th of February, and we got out of hospital on something like the 16th of March.
Wow.
And we were kind of vaguely aware of what was going on.
Yeah.
Because my fiance's sister works as a professor of neonatal neuro imaging, and I only understand some of those words in Oxford. So she was quite up in what was going on, because she works right next to the Jenner Institute where they were developing the one of the vaccines. So her whole department got kind of redeployed to kind of help out with all that stuff. So she was kind of keeping us up to date with what was going on, but we didn't really fully appreciate it. We got out of hospital on, like I say, like the 16th or 17th of March, can't really remember. And then I had a gig at Ronnie's with my big band a couple of days later, and then we went into lockdown the next day.
Holy.
So it was like, what's going on? We go away for 5 minutes and the planet breaks. It's
your
like,
fault.
come on, guys.
However,
So yeah, it was.
However, was it a successful surgery?
It was a successful surgery, thank you.
Good.
So basically what they did was they joined his stomach up, they kind of stretched that up and cut open the bit of esophagus that he did have and attached that. So he's always going to have issues with eating and stuff, but other than that, he's a very normal, healthy, crazy, noisy little 1-year-old now. So yeah.
that's so amazing. But how crazy, what a beginning of 2020.
I know. And I tell you what, he's definitely the benefactor of lockdown, because we were both there for,
of course,
we've basically both been there for a whole year. I mean, you know, so I'm kind of in a funny sort of way grateful for that opportunity.
Yeah.
To have been, you know, there the whole time. You know, the first few months were, you know, gotta be honest, really stressful, because we had this little sick baby. We couldn't have nurses or anything to the house. It was all on Zoom, or it was all on phone calls. So it was pretty, you know, it was pretty intense, you know.
You must have been extremely nervous.
Yeah, really, really very, very nervous. But yeah, like I say, we've come through the worst of it, I think. And you know, certainly from a working point of view and playing point of view, it didn't really, I didn't really have the space in my head or in my life to kind of not worry about it is the wrong word, but kind of think about it too much. And there was times where I really wanted to listen to music, but I couldn't really bring myself to listen to music. It was kind of, it's quite a funny emotional thing. I certainly didn't even touch the trumpet for quite a long time, you know. There was a few things came in. There was a couple of like online sessiony things, you know, all these kind of lockdown videos that everyone's got to be sick of now, right? So there was a few of those things came in, and I just kind of did that and then put it away again and didn't really think about it. So it's only quite recently I've started to kind of re-engage with kind of doing any kind of practice again or any kind of serious playing again. So it's funny to have that kind of enforced kind of break for a start. And in a way, maybe it was kind of, it was quite nice to have the physical break from the instrument and the mental break from music in a funny way for me personally. And I've kind of, on the whole, quite enjoyed slowly getting back into physically playing the trumpet again and physically and mentally re-engaging with music again. And I'm doing a little bit of writing, and I've done quite a lot of writing, kind of big band charts and things. So yeah, it's been a funny process for sure. And, you know, a lot of people have definitely found this tough, and, you know, everyone's had their moments. I've definitely had my moments, but yeah, that's the kind of funny summary of the last year for me, I guess.
Well, what a year. That's pretty eventful as it is. And as you said, it's you can't really replace time with your child, especially in the situation you're in. And obviously being able to support your partner is amazing. So like we were just saying off the screen before the stream started, you know, you've got to take the positives, you know, sort of out of the situation. And I mean, sure, a positive that I've taken out of this is that I too, you know, took some time down, because it's not that you lose passion for it. It's just, you rarely get that time away. I mean, especially for you. Yeah. I mean, on a general year, how many gigs do you reckon you're pumping out?
Well,
couple of hundred at least, in that.
I was going to say certainly in the couple of hundreds for sure. For sure.
So you would never elect to take this kind of amount of time off, would you?
No, there wouldn't be the chance to do that.
Yeah, exactly. So for me, having that time away, I took the horn off, and then when I put the horn back on, I could, as much as it was crap to have a silent mute in for most of the time, but I could actually focus about what I'm doing rather than just doing what I have to, if you know what I mean, to make the job work. And that's one positive I brought out of it. But
how much of a break did you have to have from the job? Like how long did you not work? Work for, as it were?
We didn't play For quite a while, actually. It must
Yeah.
have been at least. So we changed it up at my work. So we were trying to evolve music stuff. So we were still teaching. We were still doing lessons and stuff like that. So we were still playing as such, but
Okay.
we weren't exactly playing together, if you know what I mean.
No.
So yeah, in the end we took at least I took two or so months off, but then that was off the actual trumpet. I was still trying to keep my chops around here, and stuff like that, and trying to keep all that built, because you just never knew what was going to happen. We could have come back the next day, but so it sort of had to be ready. But I was like you, it was nice to take a bit of time off, but obviously thank God things are starting to open up. We've got some guys in here joining us, which is great, Ryan. Wendy's popped in. She says hey, some kisses.
Hello,
hey,
Wendy.
Thanks so much for joining us. Chris Gomes has come in. He says King Kong of the high notes in top building. So yes, thanks for joining us again, Christoph. So Ryan, based on that, how did it all start for you? Having a bit of a look back, you were quite young. I think you were around 11. Was that correct when you started?
Yes. Yeah.
Could you just sort of break it down? If you come from a musical family, what was the passion? What was your inspirations? That drove you into it.
Yeah. Well, my dad was a trumpet player, so he was definitely the inspiration to play the trumpet. And when I was growing up, he always had amazing vinyl records on, and just amazing music. So my mum and dad separated when I was quite young, so I kind of, I would stay with him for a bit, whilst living with my mum. So when I did get to see him, the time was very lovely. It was very intense, and it was when I showed a bit of an interest in music, because he never ever encouraged me to play the trumpet. I went to him and said, and the funny thing was I never got to hear him play because he'd actually given up by the time I was old enough to realize what he had done. So I ended up he worked in a sort of a not quite social work, but he worked in a center for very disabled people, and he absolutely loved that job. And then after that, he was an amazing swimmer, so he was a lifeguard after that in a swimming pool, and that's what he did. But I think once a trumpet player, no matter what you do, you're a trumpet player, because he still acted, talked, like a trumpet player. So the interest came from him for sure, and he gave me my first trumpet lesson. So he gave me his old trumpet, and gave me a trumpet lesson. The first thing he tried to get me to play was just a C scale, because he was self-taught as well.
Oh wow!
So you're a self-taught person teaching a 11-year-old, but he had such an amazing passion for music. It just rubbed off on me, and he had some great stories. He was in Irish show bands in the 60s. So he had lots of crazy stories, and he even played with Maynard at one point. When Maynard came to Dublin, he was living in Dublin. It's quite a nice story actually. My dad knew the trumpet section very well and asked to go to the rehearsal. So he was just sitting watching the rehearsal, and Maynard walked in, and I think saw the trumpet with my dad and said, "Hey, you a trumpet player?" My dad was like, "Yeah," and he said, "Play." So Maynard just got him to play on the gigs. It was, very inclusive and lovely. So, so my dad got to play with Maynard and I didn't.
Yeah, a little bit of jealousy there, maybe.
So yeah, that's where it kind of started for me. Was the passion that my dad had for music and trumpet playing, and we would sit up, till all hours in the morning. He would put on.
Oh. We might have, we're just having a bit of technical issues here. In a minute. We may have lost him for a bit. We will be back. I hope we're still live. I've lost him a little bit there. Just give me 2 secs while I message him, and we'll get him back straight with it. Please stay with us, everyone. He may have just dropped out. Oh, here he goes. He's back now. We're back.
Oh.
There we
Hello,
go.
sorry. I hope it's not.
That's
I
all
hope
right.
it's not my
No,
dodgy signal.
I don't know what it was, but we're still live, and I was warning everyone that it's absolutely fine. You will be back eventually, and you're back. So please continue your story.
I don't know where you heard up to, but the end of it really was just that it was kind of like listening to a record with my dad was
Of
like a
course.
masterclass in how to listen to a record, because he knew every detail. He just he had such an enthusiasm for it, and that just really rubbed off on me, and it's never left me actually.
So
That's where that started.
that's incredible that you've said that, because like I've met certain people that do that. There's certain people out there, I think, that don't listen to themselves back, and or things that they've been part of, and then there's other people who listen it back and they can actually tell. Like it might have been a recording from 10 years ago, but they're like, "Oh, I split this note coming up." Do you know what I mean? And
Oh man,
they know
I'm
it.
that guy. I'm that guy.
So tell me, what was it about your dad? Like, what did your dad explain to you about listening? Like, what was it? And what do you do now when you listen to records or listen to yourself back?
I think the thing that he really instilled really early on was not just first of all not just listening to the trumpet. If he'd put on like a Clifford Brown record, and as a young kid I was just obsessed with the trumpet, but he really was like, listen to what George Morrow's doing in the bass at that point, listen to Harold Land, or listen to what Sonny Rollins is doing here. It was just he just encouraged me to see the whole.
Yeah.
Try and see the whole picture rather than just focus on this one little thing, as important as that is for other things. But really, he really instilled, music's it's the whole thing. It's not just this one little thing. This one little thing of playing the trumpet is just a little part of this record,
Yeah.
So you really need to appreciate, what the piano's doing, the role of the bass, the role of the trumpet when it's playing the head as opposed to when it's soloing or playing a backing. It was just really sensible stuff when you think about it, but a really great thing to have drilled into you when you're young. And just I think that the other thing, just his utter enthusiasm for it was just really infectious.
Yeah,
and
massively. Yeah, I mean it's like we were chatting with Gary Ellsbrook last week, and he was saying, he's like, some of the guys who influenced him, he was Snoop Dogg and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like it pays to listen to everything, to get your inspiration from everything. So that's amazing. What a memory with your dad. Like,
yeah,
that's
it's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah,
and like I say, that was just with jazz, but just when you mention that, he would also then put on a Carole King record. Or he'd put on a Beatles record, or he'd put on a Toto record, or he'd put on a Beethoven symphony. Like he literally listened to anything and everything.
Yeah.
And he just said that, there's only two kinds of music. There's good and there's bad, and that's it.
Yeah.
That was.
He's got a point. He really does have a point.
See the good in everything, and
Yeah, exactly. So, how did you come about? Is it a classical background, or has it always been sort of jazz?
Not.
Absolutely not. Okay.
Definitely. Initially was very, very much jazz. That's what sparked my imagination. I think that I remember the day that I kind of the penny dropped, like the bombshell dropped for me with music. It was in my dad's flat. It was a late summer afternoon. We were about to go out somewhere, and it was an old Victorian tenement that he lived in, and there was these old wooden shutters on the window, and the sun was shining in. There was like he was a smoker as well, so there was like smoke everywhere.
It's like your own jazz
and
club.
There was, yeah, totally, man. Yeah. And there was sun shining in the window, and then he put on Coltrane's Sound, the album Coltrane's Sound.
Wow.
And the first track, Equinox, came on, and it started off and just whatever happened in that room at that moment, it was like a magical epiphany of, I'm going to be a musician.
Yeah,
it was like, I couldn't play, I wasn't, I'd only just started. I could barely play a C scale, but it was just like, I'm going to be a musician. It was just like, that's it right there. you know. So
That-
that
I mean, that's the power of music right there, isn't it? That's incredible. And I would, if you're gonna have that epiphany to become a musician, in any way, and then you turn into the man that you've turned into and the player that you've turned into, then hats off to you. It really is incredible.
well, thank you.
Mike Thomas has dropped in. He said, really
Hey,
great to
Mike.
see you here, Ryan, and glad the family are well. Wendy says,
God, I'd love to see you, Mike. It's been such a long time, and thank you, Wendy.
and Sam Ritchie's coming as well and says, hi, Ben and Ryan, sending good vibes from Amsterdam. Thanks so much, guys, for joining us. As always, I don't always want to be the guy asking the questions, but I'll selfishly ask them and chat with Ryan all night. But if you guys have your questions, please get them in the comments so I'll
end up asking you a load of questions as well. You know,
so yeah, we'll just end up chatting.
I see you got the grey sweatshirt memo.
Oh yeah, I did. Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, telepathically that one.
But just slightly moving on from the jazz start in life. The next big bombshell for me was when I heard Winton Marsalis.
Oh.
Probably like a year or two after that moment. And then there was this like jazz trumpet player, and again it was my dad was like, check this guy out. It's like there's this incredible young jazz trumpet players playing with the Jazz Messengers. It's like, wow, this guy's it totally blew my mind. He was young, he was playing jazz. It was just like, okay, this is awesome. Because all the other people I'd been listening to were like Miles and Clifford Brown and Freddie Hubbard and Coltrane and, you know, all those guys, and Bud Powell and, you know, Fats Navarro and, you know, all these older guys. Half of them were dead by this point, you know, most of them. And then it was like suddenly there's this guy, he's here, he's doing it now. He's, you know, incredible jazz musician. And then he was like, now check this out. And he put on a record of Winton playing the Hummel and the Haydn Trumpet Concerto. And I was like, oh, okay, so that's changed things. Okay, so now I want to do that. so then it was like, well, I want to do that now as well. So I wanted to be a jazz and a classical. Winton Marsalis very much made me fall in love with playing classical trumpet. And that's where my ill-fated classical career began.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that. And was that probably were they the records? I can't remember what the titles of them were. Were they the ones where he won a Grammy for both, didn't he? In classical and jazz.
I think he won. Yes, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
I think he won a Grammy
in the same year.
I think it was his self-titled album, Winton Marsalis. I think I might be wrong.
Yeah.
And I think he released that at the same time as he released the record with Raymond Lepard conducting.
Oh.
Haydn and Hummel and something else. Can't quite remember.
He's one of the guys that I am striving to get onto this channel, but it is very hard because he's a very busy man. But I will keep doing my best because he has inspired so many people around the world, and he continually will. So that's amazing that he inspired you and helped craft you into the player you did as well. We've had a few questions come in, but I would like to just touch on before we get to them. So you've heard the classical, but you want to do jazz. So where did your dad point you? I mean, was he just teaching? Did he teach you the modes first, or did he put like exercise books in front of you and go, "This is what you need to do first"? What was your initial training? Because then I've got a question that's been sent in to follow this as well.
I'll tell you what my initial training was. I went to school, and you know, I think when you're a teenager, you don't really want to learn anything from your dad, you know what I mean? So then there was the kind of, it's like, oh, Dad, I'll do it myself. You know, I kind of stopped wanting to learn anything from him. He very subtly over the years taught me a lot of stuff without me knowing, you know, because he was a very kind of clever, smart guy, you know, red-headed Irishman, you know, amazing kind of just sense of humor and bit of a temper and a really quick-witted tongue, and you know, just he was brilliant. But when I went to secondary school, I actually started getting trumpet lessons from a guy called Alex Dalgleish. And Alex Dalgleish was an old he's very sadly been gone for a long time now. I think he died like 20 years ago, something like that. But he was a I guess quite a well-known Scottish Dixieland player and kind of mainstream jazz player. So then when I went to get lessons with him, he got me doing all the kind of usual rudiments, of course, and learning your scales. And there was a lot of kind of studies from like the Arbon and the Rubank and all this kind of stuff. But he saw very quickly that I had a real interest in jazz as well. So he just taught, like a lot of the lessons ended up being he would teach me a tune. He didn't particularly read chord. He wasn't like a contemporary jazz, this is the mode for this chord, and it wasn't that kind of player. It was all learn the tune, learn this tune. You know, he taught me all the things you are. You know, he taught me Skylark, he taught me Stardust, he taught me Tiger Rag. You know, he taught me a lot of old school tunes. You know,
is this with music or without music?
Totally orally.
Amazing.
Orally. He would play a phrase. You know, I'd have to find the phrase, and he'd be very patient, and then would kind of piece this whole tune together. And I didn't really know what I was doing, but you know, it was quite a kind of, maybe not the most efficient way to learn how to play jazz, but it was certainly the kind of it got me using my ear, you know, very, very much. And it was great to learn all these old tunes. And then when I kind of got good enough, he invited me to go and sit in with his band. I guess I must have been like 13 or 14. Wow. And my dad took me to, it was an old pub in Glasgow called Carnegie's. And obviously I was too young to go in, but it was the 90s, man. It was fine, you know. People kind of was like, all right, son, on you go. So it was like a proper old, you know, maybe I've got rose tinted glasses about it, but it was like going downstairs, and obviously everyone still smoked, which is bad, but you know, it was very romantic. You go in, the band was playing, and it was like when you hear a live jazz band playing for the first time when you're 13 years old, it's like, oh my God, it was like totally amazing. And then I'd sit on the front row, wait for my chance, you know, and then he'd get me up to play. I think the very first tune I played was Mahogany Hall Stomp with his band, because he'd kind of taught me it that week. So then there would be a thing where he would on our weekly lesson, he would teach me a tune to go and sit in with the following Saturday. So that was kind of that was what an amazing experience. I'm so lucky to have had that experience, you know.
There's something to be said about that, and as you said, like it's developed your ear. Do you know what I mean? Like,
for sure, yeah.
It must be for some people out there who just learn by reading. You know, they find it very hard to listen, and then
I think it's very hard to learn. Sorry, it's very hard to learn. Well, I guess it's impossible to learn jazz just by reading. You know, because it's very much an oral thing. It would be like trying to get a baby to learn how to talk, but not talk to them.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, exactly. No, you're exactly right, and it's so true. And teaching people to listen is much harder than teaching people to read. That's what I personally think.
I agree.
Yeah, and completely you know, and I'm gutted I don't have any. I mean, we have one solo lined up, but I'm saving that for a little bit later. But I've heard your improvisation chops, and they're stunning. They really are. So a lot of guys, if you want to hear it, unfortunately, I don't have that. A long improvisation video set up, so head over to Ryan's YouTube channel, and there's plenty on there. It's amazing. Please check them out.
Is it okay? I am drinking wine, but very slowly.
Fine. It's absolutely fine. You want? I think Craig Wilde, when I had him on, he went through about 2 bottles, so you can do what you want.
Well, I'll be back in a minute.
So that leads on to a question we had from Peter Dowsett. Thanks for joining us, Pete. He says, did Ryan have a natural high register as a youngster?
No, I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
Now the interesting thing about Alex Dalgleish and my dad, they weren't expert. They were totally self-taught. They weren't not to be disrespectful to either of them, but they didn't really know about, you know, embouchure and setup and all that sort of stuff. It was all, does it sound good? You know, don't worry about it, kind of thing. But I kind of learned I figured out quite early on that I was kind of playing wrong, because I only based that on looking at, like, I must have been about 15, maybe 16, 15 or 16. And and I was definitely struggling. I was really plateauing at like top C's and top D's, and I couldn't get any higher.
Mm-hmm.
And I really wanted to, because I was,
Yeah.
but because by then, you had Harry Connick Jr.'s band come out, and that was another big influence. Another big kind of a moment of hearing Roger Ingram in his prime.
Yeah.
And looking at Roger Ingram playing, it looks like he's not even playing, and he's playing like all this crazy stuff. So I was looking at people like him, and I was looking at Winton as well, like the most beautiful embouchure setup, and looking at photos of Clifford Brown and Freddie Hubbard and Maurice Andre, and looking at people and thinking, well, my embouchure doesn't look anything like any of these people, because I was playing like really to this. In fact, I've got a mouthpiece here. This is how I was playing. So I was playing kind of. This is where I play now. It's kind of here.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry. Kind of there.
Mm-hmm.
But when I started, I was a very wet player, so everyone was really wet.
Yeah.
So it would kind of slide around, and whatever way I was trying to play, I was kind of, the pressure was pulling the mouthpiece further and further that way.
Right.
So I eventually ended up playing with virtually no top lip, like hardly any top lip.
Wow.
And it was literally sitting on the side and the red of my top lip. And I was using tons of pressure, and I wasn't getting any better. If anything, I might have been getting worse.
Yeah.
So one day I just went home, I looked in the mirror, and I moved the mouthpiece to where I thought it looked right, and just changed my embouchure.
Just like that, and just kept at it. Amazing.
Yeah.
So then, how did it develop from there?
Well, interestingly, it immediately sounded better.
Centered, I'm
like
guessing.
it was more, there was less air in the sound. It was a more sonorous kind of sound.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't have any stamina. I'd even lost range. I'd lost like an octave off my range,
Mm-hmm.
But I just thought, this has got to be the right thing. It's got to be the right thing. It sounds better, so it's better, And I just practiced. I just kind of tried to slowly. I remember getting a lesson off of a guy called Nigel Boddice, who I'm sure you might have heard of. He was he's more of a conductor these days, but he was the principal trumpet of the Scottish BBC Symphony Orchestra in Scotland a long time ago,
right?
Like in the 80s and early 90s, I think. I think he'd left the orchestra by the time I met him, or was about to leave. But I went to get a kind of lesson off of him, and he kind of gave me some good studies to do and good advice. And the best bit of advice that I took from him was, if you're making any change, do little and often practice.
Yes, that's something that we're going to work onto it eventually, but it's something that a lot of people are advocating now, and it's something that I've changed to. The whole, like I've said on previous streams, I don't know who I was talking to, but these days I have ideas in my mind, so I'll walk into my practice room, which is what I'm in now. Obviously, Clifford Brown on there.
Do you know what? I noticed that yesterday when I saw that. I was like, you've got the Clifford Brown transcription book.
It forces me to do it. If I leave it there, do you know what I mean? I mean, most of the time my wife's in here and it's full of flute music. And that, I tell you what, that's a challenge, walking in here. And I always challenge myself to play whatever's on the stand first. Now, sometimes she leaves her flute stuff up and I'm just like, all right. Like James Morrison, I've been trying this new thing lately as well, which he talks about. It shouldn't take you, like, how there's people out there that, they spend half an hour, 45 minutes warming up, and they're stuck in their routine. They do that. If it works for people, that's how it works. But he doesn't.
I've got an opinion on that, but yeah.
Awesome.
We'll come back to that.
Yeah. So, and he advocates sort of do a little bit, get the blood into your lips, and then you should be able to be ready to go. So I've just been trying a little bit of that, just doing, playing little and then go, right, I'm ready to go. Challenge myself, what's on the stand, and I'll give it a go. And then once I've achieved that, I mean, obviously if it's a flute piece, who knows what's going to happen. But if, say it's a solo, I'll just open the book up and I'll go, right, I want to play from there to there. And then once it's grooving, once it's in the pocket, notes that it doesn't have to be perfect, because I mean, it's a solo, it's a jazz thing. As long as I'm covering it and I can sort of, and maybe dance around it, doesn't have to be playing the exact notes, but using it, then I'll go, okay, and I'll put the horn down. And then I'll come back and I'll do something else, pick a study or something. So what is so you said little and often. What is your approach when it comes to, practicing, or what was it when you were, I don't know how much practice you've been doing, or what's going on, but what's your approach right now?
Right now, definitely kind of along the lines of what you're saying. Not. I think people. I think there's a danger of over warming up, and I think I've definitely been guilty of that.
I think we all have.
I used to have like a really set routine where I did the same thing every day, and looking back on that, it's crazy, because your chops never feel the same every day anyway. So why would you do the same? Well, I can understand why you would maybe do the same routine to try and get them back to how they should feel or something. But I think I definitely think it's really inefficient. Actually warming up, maybe for me, but I think warming up doesn't take any time at all, really. I think warming up itself is a really quick process. Maybe some days it'll take a little bit longer, but in general, warming up is not a big, long 40-minute routine. It can be as simple as just, I'll maybe do a little bit of that just to kind of, loosen things up or get the blood going maybe. And then the very first thing I do is I'll do like a breath attack G, or a breath attack C above the G, something in that kind of range, and just observe how it feels first of all, not worry too much about how it sounds, and if it sounds terrible and feels terrible, I'll just keep doing that a few times and just try and get it to, and quietly as well. I definitely like to warm up really quietly, initially, and then once I've got that kind of sounding and feeling quite good, if I had to go on stage and do a gig, and the first note of the gig was like a top D or something, I know that I'll be able to do it. There's no doubt in my mind it's fine.
Yeah.
If there's something more extreme, if there's maybe going to be, if I know that I'm going to be opening up a gig or a session or something, and maybe I've been warned, or you look in it's it's got some properly crazy stuff in it, like double A's and B flats and whatever. I'll maybe do something a bit more tailored towards what I have to do. But in general, the warming up process is quite quick, because I think once you're warmed up, you get into maintenance practice territory, which is important also, especially if you've been doing a lot of stuff and you need to do those little checks and do some gentle tonguing or double tonguing or flexibilities or something, or kind of production, sound exercises or whatever. But I think it's good to differentiate warming up from practicing. They're two very, very different things for me.
I think you've completely just nailed it right there. Separate the two. Separate the warm up from actually practicing something. One of my teachers back home, John Hoffman. Don't know whether you heard him. He's from Raw 74 album and stuff like that. But he lives and works, and he's an incredible trumpet player. But he always says, when you line up for a gig, all you're doing when you're warming up is you're just testing how those lips are today. You're testing, you don't have to play high and loud or anything. You're just seeing how's your flexibility, how's this, how's the production, and then how to change to adapt to how those chops are feeling on that day. So that's something I've always tried to keep.
And also I think I think it's a really good thing to kind of do that and then just leave it, just put it down, go and do something else for 20 minutes.
I think you've taught Louis Dalzell very well, because he said exactly the same thing.
All right.
He said he does.
I can't teach Louis anything, man.
No, I know. Obviously, I didn't mean like that. I mean, like, he was talking about working up to a studio. He's been booked for a studio work. He'll do it, see how the chops are, then he'll put it down, go get a coffee, and then come back. I'm guessing it's a very similar concept.
Yeah, I think so. It's definitely. It's good to kind of, it's definitely good to do a bit and leave it, and then when you come back to it, generally it just feels and sounds better when you do a little bit and then leave it, and you come back and it's like everyone's going to be all right.
Yeah, of course.
I hope. Everyone's going to be all right, right?
We've got a question here from Stephen. He says, for someone who has great musicality in their head but lacks the chops and skill to play what's in his head, how can I change my practice so I'm actually getting better?
Okay, let me just think. Can you put that question back on
Of
the
course
screen
I
so I
can.
can read it again? Is that all
Yeah.
right for someone?
I'll move me out of the way as well. Here we go.
No, no, no.
For someone who has great musicality in their head but lacks the chops and the skill to play what's in their head, how can I change my practice so I'm actually getting better?
Um, it's quite a big question, I
Yeah,
guess.
I'll leave it up and I'll just move it down the bottom.
Yeah, I've not knowing uh, what you mean by lack of chops and skill. That could say a couple of things to me, maybe. Um, I mean, if you mean lack of chops, as in you've got like a like a quote unquote a bad setup,
Hmm.
that's inefficient. That's a slightly different thing from maybe you've not done the right kind of practice to be able to play the instrument efficiently. That might be two different things.
Hmm.
Um, I think for someone, and when I say someone, I mean me, who's kind of been through every kind of embouchure disaster over the years, and head disaster and kind of overthinking and actually doing damage to my chops, which I'll tell you about
Hmm.
later because it's quite a funny story. But um, I would maybe I'm sorry, my friend. I don't know you, so I
Stephen,
don't know
yeah.
you're playing. But maybe it would be good to as a big part of um your kind of daily practice routine, if you've got time to practice every day, maybe a good chunk of that could be designated to kind of you know good old fashioned boring trumpet playing. Um, Again, doing little and often, I think, is really good advice. But listening to the sound you're making, do you know all your scales? Do you know all your major and minor scales for a start? Can you get around the arpeggios? Um, can you get around playing the arpeggios in different, starting on different, not always starting on the root, for instance? Um, can you do those kind of fairly basic things? Nothing has to be high or anything. If you can get around the instrument efficiently in the low register, the low to middle register, you're probably going to be able to play higher anyway. But maybe it needs to be kind of a bit of disciplined, boring trumpet playing, to enable the stuff that's in your head to come out, because um, unless you've got a good technique, technique is the thing that, in my opinion, um, good technique is the thing that allows creativity.
Hmm.
Because if the instrument is a barrier to what's in your head, then it's the technique you need to work on. So maybe it's like I say, maybe it's knowing your scales, knowing your chords. Maybe it's physically able to play the instrument, in which case you need to do a bit of work on long notes and flexibility, and maybe a bit of tonguing. I don't know what kind of playing you do. So I hope that doesn't sound too vague. But it's quite a big question. But
Oh, it's a massive
I
question.
think
Yeah.
I think hopefully that's distilled it down to a couple of
Mm.
helpful ideas that maybe you could think about.
I hope that really helps, Stephen. It helped me. So if that has helped, or if you want a little bit more explanation, mate, just leave a comment and I'll pass it on to Ryan. Um,
Yes, for sure. I'm really happy to get into more stuff with people if they want.
yeah. Just
Um,
based on that, based on the saying of "you don't build a house on sand," uh, what would be a couple of key, just based on that question? What would be a couple of things that maybe you do or have done in your life to build up these muscles or keeping these muscles like kicking along?
I used to be, I guess I used to be really obsessed with strength.
Right. Yeah.
Like embouchure strength.
Mm.
Um, and I think it's taken me a long time to realize that embouchure strength is kind of maybe taught or thought about in the wrong way. Embouchure strength is like, what is embouchure strength? It's like, if you do that, you're going to make a sound. So actually the corners, they don't, like I used to play in, like I wanted to keep the corners really set and solid all the time. And I just got I'm so tired, you know? So now I guess one of the concepts I've tried to keep in my head is like minimum effort because I'm getting old and lazy. But minimum effort. So not like, for instance, if you're holding your arm out, you don't need to. There's no effort involved. So for me, that would be like a low C.
Yeah.
And then if I have to hold this pad of paper, it's still not a lot of effort, but it's a bit more effort. So maybe that's the C above that. As far as holding the shape, I think about holding the shape more than embouchure strength as such. So the more kind of compression involved, and the more if it's loud, the more air going through the instrument, the more effort you have to make, the more effort you need to hold the shape. So that's kind of roughly what I think about kind of strength, as it were.
Yeah.
But as far as what I practice,
like what have you done to break it down even smaller? Well, obviously, but just give us something. What are you focusing on? Oh, you know what? I'll play this video because this is you, and you listed it up. You'll know it. You listed it up as blowing out some cobwebs. Okay. And I love it because the center of sound and the sound that you're making is so pure, and it's something that I think a lot of people do admire about your trumpet playing, and it's something that we can dive into after this. And I'd love to know what's going through your head. Do I have it on here? I swear I don't. You know what? I've got to find
going through my head, other than like the pressure and possibly fainting.
Well, yeah. I've got it on here. Where is it? There it is. Okay, let me just play this for you, everyone, and then we'll have a chat about it. I mean,
embarrassingly, I'm wearing the same goddamn jumper. I do have other clothes. Honestly, I do have other clothes.
There's nothing embarrassing about that. It's cold, man. You got to wear what's around. Honestly, like it's one of those things where you put it up, and it was so funny, afterwards you're just like, yep, all right, that's cool. It's just testing the cobwebs and stuff like that. Now, it's this. There's a purity, like I was saying earlier before we watched of your sound. What are you actually concentrating? Because you were saying you're blowing the cobwebs out, so I'm guessing you're practicing with a purpose. So
yes, definitely. I'll tell you what. I'll tell you about that clip. I'd spent one exercise that I do from time to time is I'll pick a tune, I'll pick a ballad, and I'll play the ballad in the usual key, and then I'll have a rest, and then I'll play the whole ballad again up a minor third, and then I'll keep doing that. So that clip was actually at the end of playing that tune.
So how low do you start then?
I started an octave below that. Oh no, I beg your pardon. That tune's usually in C concert, so it starts in your low A.
Yeah.
So then the next key up is that key, only it was an octave below that. And then the next, yeah, exactly. So that was kind of I'd done the whole thing, and then you got to do this awful social media stuff, which I'm rubbish at. I kind of do it every now and again because people say you need to put more stuff on social media. So I was like, okay, I'll put the phone up, and then I just played a little bit of that tune. So that was kind of just the end of that kind of exercise, really. And I can kind of see that I'm kind of struggling a little bit.
but that's what it's about, isn't it? It's like, but there's everyone has said, well, not everyone, but a lot of the guys on here said, just record yourself when you play, when you practice, when you do stuff, you pick things up.
That is the biggest, that would be one of the biggest tips I could give anyone, really, would be record yourself. Because that is that's the mirror.
Yeah. Yeah, of
you
course.
can't hide. You can't hide from it, and you think you're playing great, and then you listen back to it and you go, God, that was pretty bad.
Yeah.
Or you know what I mean? Or you think it's terrible, and you listen back to it and go, actually, it's not as bad as I thought it was.
Yeah.
But I tell you what's great. What's a really great thing to do is like like track up a trumpet section thing to a click.
Yeah.
You know, just for kind of like discipline of, you know, phrasing and accuracy and tuning and all the rest of it. That's a great, and it's great that we have this technology now that most people are able to do that. But if you're not able to use like, you know, a recording program and do that sort of thing, just record yourself on your phone and just listen
Yeah.
back, and you know, it's one of the best things anyone can do for sure.
Massively. I mean, there's multiple devices out there to use as well. Like I used to just chuck YouTube on and play along with that, but now like Louis and Callum have brought out the ultimate big band toolkit. You know, so there's that option. There's also Gordon Goodwin's books where they've removed the trumpet players and stuff like that. So yeah, look around, guys. There's loads, and this is coming from one of the finest lead players in the world. So he definitely knows what he's talking about.
And I tell you what are you? I mean, you know, I grew up, you know, as a lot of us did when there was no internet. You know,
Yeah, of course, me too. Yeah,
and it was just putting on a record and playing along, and that's still a really great thing to do. Put on a Count Basie record,
yeah,
you know, and play the lead chart. Put on a Frank Sinatra record, you know, and play. You know, I used to do that all the time. You know, put on like a big band record and try and, you know, try and make it like I was in the band. You know.
yeah. I mean, I do the same thing with, but the biggest thing I try and do it for is to match the style, like being able to do.
That's the whole point, isn't it? It's like matching the style.
Yeah, massively.
You're dead right.
I remember I had to do an old school big band gig at work, and obviously they kept asking just vibrato, and I'm like, well, who am I going to listen to? Obviously I went back to the old boys, but I also listened to Michael Lovett. You know, he's a great, that real old school. It's passionate, you know, and then I love, and when I'm thinking of power, I'm thinking of the Wayne Bergerons. I'm thinking of you. You know, and I listen to you guys, and I think of how do they get that power and purity, but they're not killing themselves, and that's something we can move on to eventually. And something that leads on to that is a question for you is because you said warming up quietly, but how much of your practice? Because that video, you weren't tanking it, but it was up there. It was nice and big.
Giving it one, yeah.
So what's your practice? Are you just a quiet practicer? Like I know Louis did. He talked about you guys traveling together and how you guys demonstrate to play high soft, and it's something that I've incorporated into my practice, or you know, being able to because you just control it a lot better. But could you just talk about like how much like quiet to loud playing? Because obviously there's always that thing of if you're going to play loud, you don't know whether your chops can handle it.
Well, that's the thing. That the loud thing is where the strength comes in, but the quiet thing is where the compression comes in, and where the note is. Because if you can get the note, you know, if you can play a very controlled top G really quietly, then you know that the compression's right, and you know that this is all working properly. And then all you have to do is just, if you want to get it louder, in theory, all you have to do is push a bit more air through, but then you can't just push a bit more air through. You've then got to work harder to control the note. So that's where the strength thing comes in, I think. I think for me, I definitely spend a lot of time playing quietly. I mean, when I'm actually like practicing, I practice kind of probably some weird stuff. You know, I practice a lot of. I kind of first of all, I make up a lot of exercises I just make them up. I kind of improvise exercises quite a lot, you know, maybe based on like sort of an urban type study, but I'll make one up, and it, you know, not necessarily in a jazz style, but just I'll kind of improvise something, and I'll maybe have a concept of, okay, I want to work on a kind of chordal thing. One thing I did quite recently, I feel like I've not done a lot of practice recently, probably because I haven't. But when I did practice recently, I was kind of making up like an arpeggio type exercise where I was just playing triads. So I was playing triads moving in fourths. So major triads moving in fourths, but just wherever one triad ended, I would just find the nearest note and pick the next triad that was up a fourth. So for instance, I'd like maybe start on a C, do do do, and then for the F, rather than starting on the F, and go do 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 do, I'd maybe go do 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 do, and then maybe go back up for the G, for the B flat, and the E flat. I would just try and mix it around and try and not be too predictable, because for me that was like a brain exercise as well as a chop technique exercise. Other times I will literally just open the arbon and try and play what page it opens at.
Yeah, of course.
And a lot of that stuff I'll definitely play quietly and try and get really good production quietly, because it's definitely playing loud's fun and all that, but it makes playing quiet really hard.
Yes, it does.
But
yeah.
quiet playing seems to help the loud stuff a bit more, but you still have to give it one every now and again, to maintain the kind of strength and the sound and all the rest of it. So it's definitely a real mix. I'm not sure what I don't think there's a set kind of 60-40 or 50-50 or 30-70 vibe. I think it kind of depends on the day and what I'm kind of what I'm trying to achieve that day. So some days I won't practice so much kind of trumpet stuff. I'll maybe want to work on a jazz tune, like that Coltrane tune, Countdown. I've never been very good at playing that tune, so I did a bit of shedding on that recently, or maybe I'll play I'll want to learn a new tune that I don't really know very well. And then other days it'll be more of a kind of pure trumpet day,
Yeah.
where it'll be kind of long notes and all that sort of stuff. So I think it's for me personally, it's really important to vary the practice as much as possible, rather than get kind of stuck in one thing, and bored or whatever. It's good to kind of vary it.
I definitely feel that is the way to move forward. Like in your practice, if you're doing the same thing over and over again, all you're going to do is just become very good at doing that one thing. Varying it around, obviously you're going to go, aren't you?
Totally, man.
So, yeah, Peter, I'll get to your question in a sec. Steve Bland says, absolute delight listening to Ryan. Great stories and some great advice. Trumpet sound is incredible.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you.
Wendy's keeping me in line. She says, playing high isn't everything. Ryan is a great player without that. You are exactly correct, Wendy.
Thank you, Wendy. Do you know what? Just while it's so lovely that you're tuning in, Wendy. The other great epiphany, just I would have told this story anyway, whether Wendy was here or not. The next great epiphany moment for me was meeting Derek Watkins.
Oh yeah.
And I think I was 18. Was I 18? Yeah, I think it was 18. 18 or 19, round about then. So this is kind of tied in with my ill-fated classical career moment. So I got into music college on a classical course in Glasgow, because there was no jazz course. And actually, when I went there, it was like 95 I started there. Jazz was kind of looked down on by most of the even though there was like established jazz courses in England. In Scotland there was no jazz course yet. So I got in and I had to do a classical. I didn't even. It's funny. I didn't even consider that leaving Glasgow was an option.
Really? Wow.
I didn't even consider that was possible. So I kind of put all my eggs in one basket, and I was like, I want to go here. And another great inspiration for me was the then principal trumpet player of the Scottish National Orchestra. Now that Royal Scottish National Orchestra, a guy called John Gracie, who's a legendary principal trumpet player. He was, but before he was in that orchestra, he was in, I believe, the BBC in Manchester with Morris. It was him and Maurice Murphy in the trumpet section.
Not bad.
And they were both quite similar. John was a similar type of Morris type
Mm.
player. He was just an absolute beast. So I knew I wanted to study with him, because he taught there. So anyway, I went to music college, studied, got John Grace as a teacher, which was amazing. And to cut a very long story short, I got chucked out of music college in my repeat first year. And it was like halfway through the term. And there was one more concert to do that I was allowed to take part in. There was a newly formed big band set up by the amazing head of brass at the time, a guy called Brian Allen. It was a great trumpet player as well. He started the Fine Arts Brass Ensemble, or Brass Quintet, which Angela Whelan is now in.
Oh wow!
So he either started it or was a founding member of it.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, he started this big band because he was a very kind of good reforming kind of, jazz is good. We need to get this into the college.
Mm-hmm.
So I was the kind of secret hidden weapon in the brass department, because nobody knew that I could play jazz really, apart from a few people that I kind of fell in with. But so basically I was this kind of like mediocre, pretty bad classical trumpet student. But then in the big band, it was like I felt more at home and I could really play properly. And people were like, "Oh, okay, you can play this stuff." Can't play. Yeah. When I heard him doing the Hindemith the other week, it wasn't so great, but this is okay. Anyway, Derek Watkins was booked to come and do a master, like a kind of master class and concert with the big band. Mm-hmm. So that was the first time I met Derek, and that was the first time that I'd ever heard that kind of trumpet playing in the same room, I'd only ever heard it on record, but suddenly I've got Derek Watkins, and actually I didn't even know who he was until he came.
Wow!
Amazingly, because like I said,
technology and everything,
technology. I grew up in Glasgow in the 80s, and the 90s, and things filter through slowly, But but then subsequently turned out I did know who he was because I'd heard him in loads of recordings that I knew. I didn't always know who was playing. Anyway, he was like the nicest guy in the world, and he seemed to take a bit of a shine to me, because I was this kid that could, was in this classical big band but could take a solo. And by that time I had a bit of chops, I had a bit of range, and I remember we were doing the Harry Connick Jr. version of It Had to Be You. And I think Derek just played the tune, and played a solo instead of somebody singing it. But I remember like nailing the top G at the end, and on the concert, Derek turned around and was like, "Yeah!" So I was like, "Wow, that's amazing." And I kind of got to hang out with him, and he was such a kind of life force, and he had amazing stories, and it was just like, by the time he did come to college, I had found out who, I heard he was coming, hadn't heard of him, did a bit of research, was like, fuck, this is amazing,
Of course.
And the other part to that, which is related to why I got kind of I had to leave music college, was I had a kid when I was 18.
Right.
So when I was in first, my son was born in the April of my first term, I think. So like we started in the September. Yeah, we started in the September. And then my son Michael was born in the April following that.
Right.
So it was a bit of a kind of crazy time, and I was kind of like just trying to do the music college thing, and had this baby, and it was just like, oh God, working jobs and doing jazz gigs and all this, because it was unsustainable,
Yeah.
But Derek, I had already been chucked out, right? But they still wanted me to do the concert, which and I still wanted to do the concert.
Yeah.
And Derek, it was like he was like, he was almost like a lifeline to me, because it was like I heard this thing live. I heard how the trumpet should sound, really, because I'd never heard it like it live. I'd only heard it on record. So that was the next big inspiration for me. It was like, okay, I'm not at college anymore. So what I have to do is I need to try and sound like that guy. So that was such an inspiration for me for years. Was meeting him. When I left music college, I had to get like a full-time job, so I ended up working in a bar and restaurant, and I only did gigs when I could. So I was working this full-time job to kind of support a family and all that, or help support a family, and yeah, just practiced. Kind of, I did it on, I kind of had to just kind of focus and do it myself, and kind of, it's like, okay, if I really want this, I'm just going to have to figure out a way to get really good. And I'd heard Derek Watkins in the flesh, and was like, that's what I want to sound like. So that's what I spent my time trying to do, basically.
And in the end,
So
I mean,
so Wendy, it's kind of, Derek's such a big part of why I am where I am.
and the way you play, the way you play, which is
the way I try and play.
Well, I mean, let's play. Derek Watkins has sculptured so many trumpet players from around the world. They're playing. He continues to. He always will. There's so many people out there that completely love him, and he was.
Well, I think the next time that I met him, I might have got my timeline slightly wrong, but the next time that I met him was doing a gig with him.
That's incredible, isn't it?
Like how amazing was that?
Yeah.
And I think it was with the SNO, when John Gracie was still in the trumpet section, and Derek. It was Derek and Stuart Brooks came up, and we were doing the Ellington piece Harlem.
Yeah.
The orchestral version, and for some reason, I think I'd loosely kept in touch with Derek, and maybe our paths across a couple of times. But I think Derek recommended getting me for that gig, or and actually I only played with him a handful of times, and he was always lovely. It always felt like he kind of took me under his wing a little bit, even though I only met him a few times. And actually, a really lovely thing is I had this baby when I was at college. Derek, kind of bounced my new,
yeah.
8-month-old son or whatever he was at the time on his knee. He was lovely to him. So it was always like it was a really special thing. It was a really special time. So yeah, and he it was Derek that when he got I think he was ill, and couldn't do a gig with the Metropole Orchestra, and he recommended me for it.
Oh wow!
Which was kind of unbelievable,
Yeah.
So
an absolute
Derek was and still is is a really present kind of, he's a really present kind of trumpet player in my kind of life,
In your time, your life.
And and there are many big influences, but he's one of the absolute biggest for sure.
And I think he still is for a lot of people out there. And as you said, like, you heard this sound in real life, and if anyone who has heard Derek in the flesh, you never forget the way Derek played, and just the ease that he just made it look as well. It was incredible.
Yeah, it was pretty unique, really.
It really was. And Wendy says, "Thank you, Ryan." So,
pleasure.
So, well, there's your journey to where you are now. Let's have a quick look before I ask you Peter's question. Just a quick short rundown of some of the people you played with. You played with like Quincy Jones, Aretha Franklin, George Michael Bublé, Tom Jones, Robbie Williams, Randy Brecker, till Bronner, Kurt Elling. I mean, you played with so many groups as well. Like, it's incredible. So that's obviously there's a wide variety of background stuff to playing within orchestras, to playing with BBC Big Band, to playing obviously some lead stuff, to playing some jazz. So Peter's got a good question for you, which is, does Ryan use different mouthpieces depending on what's on his stand?
Sometimes, generally not too much. If there's something very classical, I'll put in like a 3C. But I try and kind of I try and make a kind of all round sound, that hopefully translates, and I can hopefully translate it to whatever I'm kind of doing. So like my focus, and this gets back to Derry Watkins as well. He said, and I know this is a famous quote from him, because I've heard other people saying it: play on the smallest mouthpiece that you can make a good sound on. So I really took that on board. If you want to be a commercial player,
Yeah.
That's definitely really good advice. So I definitely do that. So even when I'm playing on it, because I guess I play on a kind of mouthpiece on the smaller side of things. I mean, man, I've played on every mouthpiece you can imagine over the years. I swear to God, honestly, I've played on them all. I've from a Bach 1.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. Right.
Is that
up
bigger
to,
than a 1X then?
I don't know about that.
Okay.
I don't know about that. Maybe a 1X sounds like it's probably bigger, but I don't know.
I remember it being a bucket, but yeah.
Yeah, but I play on a Bach 0. No.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've played on that, and everything in between to like the Maynard Ferguson copy of a Giardinelli MF Cup.
Wow.
So it's like I've done all of that. And literally everything in between. I've played on so many Warburtons. I've played on so many Bach mouthpieces, like from a 1 to 1.5 C, 1 1/4 C, 3 C, 7 C, 10.5 E. Rudy Muck, Zatola. Oh, man, I've wasted so much time on mouthpieces. But yes, there's definitely a certain sensible thing in using the right tool for the job, for sure. As far as much as I can get away with it, I'll just try and play on what I play on. But if there's something, like say, if it's a set, like if you turn up to a session and there's something that's very much this has got to sound this way, then I'll definitely put in a 3C. If I have to.
Have you ever struggled with blending? So say you've been booked on a gig, you're mainly playing lead, but then obviously we pass things around, don't we? And then what's your concept behind? Say you've still got the small mouthpiece in, you don't bother changing, or whatever mouthpiece you got in, you don't bother changing.
No, sometimes you can,
yeah. But what's your concept then? You're like, right, I'm not the lead player now. What just could you, for some of our guys, like, what are you thinking about? Are you thinking about more open, more this, more dark? Like how do you approach that?
To be perfectly honest, when I'm in a gig situation, and in a section, like say I might be on lead or I might be on fourth or whatever it is, it's really I try and just have a concept of what I want to sound like in my head, and usually that kind of translates. I know that's a really unhelpful, rubbish answer.
It's not really. I mean, as talking about Derek Watkins, I mean, the approach that a lot of trumpeters around the world do is, what would Derek do?
For sure.
And that's, so you'd keep that sound in your head. You'd keep that.
Yeah, and then you play and you go, well, he wouldn't have done that.
It's very true. Or he would have done that better.
Yeah. But yeah, there's definitely a kind of I think I've got quite. I think because of the amount of stuff that I kind of listened to when I was growing up, and the amount of genuine serious kind of study of players and styles and transcribing and copying. I think I've got quite a strong concept of what I want to sound like in a given situation. So I think I'm lucky. I'm lucky that I've had that experience. And I'm glad that I've done that kind of, serious work, in certain areas. If I'm playing, there's definitely been times, there's definitely been times where I've been playing in an orchestra, and I've been brought in to do what a commercial player does in an orchestra. You're there to kind of play the lead big band charts. There's a guy who actually I kind of grew up with from music college. I met in music college. He's a guy called Brian Byrne, and actually he was on that gig with Derek. He was playing piano. So he's a great piano player, and he's a movie composer now, and he now lives in America. He moved to LA like 15 years ago, something like that, 10 years ago, probably 15, maybe more. But he's a real fan, right? He's a real fan of like Roger Ingram style, Harry Connick Jr. style lead trumpet writing, right? So he was great because he really pushed me to kind of like, do that type of playing, in a lot of ways. But he always, when he comes over, he still does stuff with the orchestras in Dublin. So I've been in with the RT Concert Orchestra with him quite a lot. And you generally know when Brian's written a pad of music for a gig. For me, it's going to involve some pretty extreme lead trumpet writing. Yeah. It's also going to involve some proper jazz stuff, and it's going to involve some proper orchestral, classical, filmic type stuff. So it's an amazing gig to do because you have to just be playing. You have to be really on your game,
Yeah, definitely.
So there's definitely been that situation where you're playing this thing and it's this crazy, all over the place lead trumpet chart, and and then the next thing you've got to play is like a really quiet entry on like a top A, a medium top A, first line A, and it's like, God, thanks, Brian, and sometimes you come unstuck, but it forces you to think. And for me, I'm probably not going to change mouthpiece in that situation, because I know that the next cue that's coming up is probably going to be like a big band thing or a jazz thing or whatever. So it's just like you just need to you need to be sensible about it. So that for me, that's where the concept of maybe speed of air and aperture size and aperture control comes in, because you're going to do the opposite if you're coming in really quiet on an A, for instance, whatever. It's got to be really the aperture's got to be really controlled, and it's got to be quite small, and the air's got to go quite slowly. Got to go. Wow, that's a bad sentence. Got to go quite slowly. Is that right? Got to go quite slow.
Yeah,
quite slowly.
I think we know what you mean.
Yeah. So yeah, it's kind of about being smart and kind of like having a strong concept of how the trumpet works, I guess, and how your chops work. So yeah.
So now you're two what's the word I'm looking for? Advocators? Is that the right word? I don't know. You're struggling with the English language there as well, man. It's rubbing up. I'm Australian, so to an English person, I put sentences wrong all the time, so it's fine. I get corrected in this country so many times.
Where are you from in Australia, man?
Brisbane.
Yeah. Did I go to Brisbane? I went to Australia about 4 or 5 years ago. I think we must have. That's terrible. I can't remember. We definitely went to. We started off in Perth.
Yeah.
We definitely went to Melbourne. What was the big venue in Brisbane? Like a big arena?
It would have been like the entertainment centre, probably.
Right. Okay. I'm sure we did, and then we ended up in Sydney. Man, Australia's brilliant.
It is. It's beautiful.
Honestly, I absolutely loved it. Amazing.
Yeah.
What you did here, man? Why did you come here? Australia's better.
Yeah, I came here.
The weather's better.
I came here for you guys. Like, I wanted to move to this country and have the opportunity to meet and play with you. You kind of guys like the Derek Watkins, the John Barclays, the Mike Lovetts, the Simon Gardners, the Ryan Quigley, the guy that I knew as Main out of Scotland. That's what I knew you as before. The young guys who are coming through now, and they're, the Tom Walshes, the Louis Dales, all those guys. I didn't actually know those guys, and they're phenomenal. James Copers. I mean, there's too many to mention the young guys that are coming through at the moment. But all the, and I'm not calling you guys old at all, but
That's okay, man. I am.
I'm not being rude, honestly. My generation, like you guys travel that far, and this
Wow.
is without technology. You do travel that far
Yeah.
because CDs, albums, all that stuff. Yeah, it's all out there, and it's been an incredible situation coming to this country and meeting all you guys and hearing you in real life. And as you say, you learn, and that's one way that I've learned, and my sound has changed completely since being in this country because of that. Do you know what I mean? So we're all constantly learning as always. So, but what I did want to say before we got a bit sidetracked with Australia was you do promote what is it? Air is overrated.
Well, that's definitely Louis, one of Louis' sayings.
Oh, is it Louis? Is
Air
it?
is over.
He
Yeah,
did.
I think so.
He dragged you into the same sentence, so I thought it might have been yours. Anyway,
No, but do you know what? It's definitely very sensible.
yeah,
Because there's only so much. When you think about it, there's really only so much air you can put down that little hole.
of
So
course.
if you put too much down, you're going to have problems. You might
Yeah.
black out, for instance.
Yeah, yeah.
So you've got to kind of find a way to control that.
Yeah, but one thing you are known for, which is apparently when you start notes, you start very similar to Maynard Ferguson by sticking your tongue. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but your tongue between,
yeah.
and so you actually are widening your aperture, which could be how it might be. It's probably not the way, but it's probably an aspect of how you get such a pure, massive sound when you do play.
I don't know. Yeah, maybe. I think that's definitely one way that I play in a certain situation for sure.
There you go. That's what I was trying to get at. Like, do you always do that, or
No,
yeah, right?
no, definitely not. Going back to the kind of classical-esque example, you would never start a note like that, because it just wouldn't sound right.
You definitely get everyone's attention.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I definitely modify certain approaches depending on the situation for sure.
Oh, that's great.
Or at least I try to.
Yeah, of course. And yeah, we have a question come through. Dylan Jacob, thanks so much for joining us. He says, "Hi, I'm playing long tones every day and my sound is airy. Any advice on how to get rid of this?"
There could be various reasons for that. One reason might be that you're playing with too wide a setup. So in other words, your aperture's maybe too big, and if your aperture's too big, there's maybe going to be quite a lot of air in the sound. Another possible reason for that is maybe the position of the mouthpiece and the lips might want to be looked at, but maybe not. I would start with aperture size, and I would start. One way to clear that up would definitely be breath attacks, I would say. So start a note really quietly, but don't use your tongue. Try and get the note to start with just the air. So you're thinking about going p for the start of the note. And that if your aperture's too wide, it'll bring your lips closer together, and it should get rid of some of the air in the sound.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I guess it's quite a hard thing to answer a question like that without seeing someone and hearing someone. But I think from what you're saying, I think that's a good place to start. Would be try and start a note with a breath attack, and quietly as well. So maybe you're playing too loud, maybe you're practicing too loud all the time. Because if you're playing loud all the time, you might be blowing your chops apart. And then when it comes to and if you're just used to kind of like making a big sound all the time, as soon as you try and go quietly, if you don't know how to play quietly, then you're not going to be modifying the aperture size. So there will be too much air in the sound then. So maybe a bit of quiet playing and a bit of breath attacks would be a very instant improvement in that. Maybe.
Yeah, I hope that answers your question, Dylan. It's great advice. It really is something that we all should move on with. And to be honest with you, Peter's come with a question, which is any thoughts on performance anxiety? Now, before you answer,
yes.
yeah, exactly. Before you answer, I'd love to play that Robbie Williams clip that you sent me. I'm going to play the beginning. And everyone listening to this, just focus on the way the way Ryan is. He plays those backgrounds and they're stunning. But then when he gets his opportunity to seize the moment of his solo, it's pretty great. And then we'll get on to a bit of anxiety after that.
Attention to ourselves. My people tell the sins of anyone. Do nothing till you hear from me. At least consider our own. If you should take the words of my shooter.
Yeah, man. It's just so before we get on to a bit of anxiety, because obviously that must have been in front of thousands, like yeah,
I think
hundreds.
Yeah, it was all like 10,000,
10,000, yeah.
between 10 and 20,000 type venues.
Yeah, and I mean that's an on the spot thing, and obviously Robbie turns around and expects you to go to let loose, and you know, and I'm guessing every single night or not, whenever the gig was on anyway, you had to make sure. You know,
something. Yeah, I mean,
something was in there.
The good thing about a kind of improvised type solo is like if your chops aren't feeling great, you don't have to do that, you know.
Right. So he didn't actually say, "Oh, I can have some wailing trumpet."
No. I mean, when you listen to the original version, it's Chuck Finley plays the solo.
Gotcha.
And it's a really earthy kind of like, you know, growly, dirty solo, and it's great. And there was some nights I did that, you know.
Yeah.
But the great thing about that gig was it was a kind of reduced big band, so I was playing like the lead stuff and doing the odd solo in the same chart, you know, which you don't usually do so much.
Oh, of course.
So it was definitely good for a good workout for the chops, that gig, you know.
Yeah, definitely. So anxiety wise, to get onto Peter's question, and it's a question that keeps getting on. Asked over and over again, and it's something that I think a lot of people deal with differently, but it's always great to get people's advice of what they do, what they think about. Now, just could you touch on how, if you ever suffered from it, and if you did, how you sort of help yourself, but also can you touch on different environments? So say you're walking into a room where you've been booked to play in front of strangers. Is it different to walking into a studio full of guys that you played with before? And so what I'm trying to think, I think the question I'm actually trying to ask is, do you suffer from more anxiety playing in front of strangers, that like playing with strangers that you've never done, or do you get more anxiety playing with guys who know what you can do, and maybe your chops aren't feeling great that day?
That's a good question. I mean, as far to answer, as far as that question goes, neither is worse than the other for me, I don't think. Mm-hmm. I've had my demons over the years for sure. I mean, I've like I say, when I say I've been through every mouthpiece option, I've been through every emotional option of playing the trumpet, to the point where I gave up for a while, like about probably about 20 years, 18 or so years ago. I gave up, you know. I stopped. I felt under too much pressure. I felt, you know, there was a lot of factors, but like, this is really bad. I smashed my trumpet up.
Holy smokes.
I smashed my trumpet up. I phoned everyone that I had gigs with and told them to unbook me. I didn't play the trumpet anymore. Wow. It was bad. So you ended up in that spot. Now that's pretty dark spot. So yeah. What was the beginning of getting yourself out of there? One of them was it was a well needed break because it was a pretty pressurized time. It was at the time when I was covering someone's maternity leave as a peripatetic teacher, and that was full time. So I was working full time 5 days a week, going around lots of schools in the west of Scotland, in a region called South Lanarkshire, which is quite a big region. So there was a lot of traveling. I didn't drive, so I was getting buses everywhere between schools. So it was pretty tiring. I was in a couple of regular bands that I played with. I was in a function band that was generally out 2-3 times a week on the weekends. I was playing in the Scottish National Jazz Orchestra at the time, which was quite a pressurized gig for a lot of reasons. Plus I was really busy, and I was really lucky to be busy. But I kind of burnt myself out a little bit by saying kind of yes to everything that I could. Because there's that freelance mentality. When you're not very busy and someone offers you a gig, you say yes. When you're too busy and someone offers you a gig, you say yes, because no is not in the vocabulary. And sometimes it's good to have no in your vocabulary if you need it from a personal point of view. So I kind of burnt myself out, I think, and I just felt under a lot of pressure, and I think I was kind of, like you say, in Scotland. I guess there wasn't too many people doing what I could do in Scotland, like the kind of lead trumpet thing, and the jazz thing, and a bit of kind of bad, mediocre classical, but I could do it a bit. So there was kind of I felt the weight of expectation on me a little bit, I think, whereas I know that I'm going to turn up and the gigs, it's going to be a roast,
Yeah.
So I think I probably felt a little bit of pressure from that. This is a long time ago, so I might be remembering some details wrong. But yeah, it just got to a stage where I was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm not enjoying it. I don't like what I'm doing anymore. And it was such a stupid thing. I was cleaning my trumpet in the bathroom, and I think the slide was stuck or something, and I kind of pulled it out, and I battered my hand, and I really hurt my hand, and I was like, and I just smashed the trumpet. so stupid, like.
I mean, there's it's incredible that you are doing what you do now after reaching that spot, because there's definitely trombone players that I know, and he's still playing, thank God. But I know of a trombone player, and he was like a big Iceman. It was massive, beautiful trombone player, but he got sick of it. He had enough, so he technically folded his trombone into the bin. He literally slammed it in there and just bent it over, slide wise, just put it in the bin.
Oh, that must be great fun doing that with a trombone. That must be brilliant. Yeah, but then I think that the break was really needed, because then when I came back, I was really up for it.
I think sorry, mate, continue.
No, the break was really important for me. I kind of did it in the wrong way, and I pissed a lot of people off.
Right.
Yeah. Which I regret. Which I definitely regret. But I couldn't not do it at the time. It was just like, this is what I'm doing. I'm done.
But then if you think about it, you reach the point of breaking where
for sure.
The advice you've just given people out there, take that break. Hopefully that will lead them to not reach that point. And you're so right. There is times, and my wife has said it to me. There are times you just need to take a weekend to yourself.
For sure.
Or just take some time down, and that is a massive thing to think about. So does that help, or I mean, not help? Being,
I mean that's completely unrelated to anxiety, though.
Well, this is the thing.
I've as far as performance anxiety goes, I've had some dark times with that, and for a very good reason, I think. I had a really bad car crash about 10 years ago, where I was on the motorway, and I got rear-ended by a lorry when I was sitting in traffic, not moving, and there was an articulated lorry, just didn't see the traffic had stopped, and it rear-ended me, and I saw it coming.
That's probably worse.
Yeah, and well, I think I'm lucky I saw it coming, because that I then kind of I stepped on the accelerator and got moving. I'd left quite a big gap between me and what was in front. I was like, I know that's going to hit me, and I know I'm gonna hit that, so I'm gonna step on the gas. So I got maybe up to about 20 or 30 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And then I think it took the impact out of the collision. So I think that actually saved more damage to me. So after that, so I had like this old Constellation that I'd played for a long time, and I loved it. And it was kind of a rubbish trumpet, probably, because anyone who tried it was like, "How do you play this? It's terrible." But I could play it because I'd played it for a long time. I just got used to it, and I loved it. I loved the sound of it. And anyway, that was in the boot, so that got completely destroyed. The car. I'll show you a picture of the car sometime, and it's like people looked at it and said, "How did you walk out of that one?"
Thank God you did.
Yeah. And then so I had to take a bit of time off. I had to take a month or two off because I couldn't had bad whiplash and I couldn't really play. Then I had to start again on a different, I hadn't played on like a modern trumpet for years and years. So it was like a very strange kind of starting to play again after a month or two. And then I think then after that, there was definitely a bit of performance anxiety involved. It kind of completely changed what I felt I could do on the trumpet. So there was definitely, I felt really on the back foot compared with what I used to be able to do. Maybe that wasn't the reality of the situation, but it certainly felt that way. And I probably did take a bit of a step back standard wise for a while, just because my head was getting in the way, and I changed trumpet, and I just messed with my head a little bit. Years before that, when I was 21, hope this isn't too waffly, but it's maybe important to answer the anxiety question. I got very sick when I was 21. I ended up in high dependency for a fortnight because it's really weird. I got a strep throat. I was on tour with a band called The Commitments, which for people who are old enough, there was a great movie out in the 90s called The Commitments. So it was kind of a spin-off band from that movie. So it was a very fun band to play in, and kind of a crazy time, and I was 21, so I was invincible, but I got a strep throat on this tour, and I kind of got over a very long period of months got really sick, but I didn't really notice it because my kind of perception of what being sick was kept changing, and the more sick I was getting, the more I didn't realize I was getting sick. I just thought I had the flu, but it got to a stage where I was waking up in the morning, I was coughing up blood and I couldn't breathe. But I just thought I had the flu. Anyway, I eventually went to the doctors on a kind of 2-day break from this tour, and they basically sent me to hospital, and I said, "But I'm going on tour tomorrow," and I was like, "No, you're not, because you won't come back." I was that sick. Yeah. So basically, I had strep throat, kidney damage, and pneumonia, and then I was on medication for like nearly a decade after that. I didn't drink for like 9-10 years. So I didn't do the whole getting crazy in my 20s. I'd save that till later. No, but I think there was definitely there was a real anxiety, like a kind of a real anxiety in general in my life after that, because I was this, riding high, this 21-year-old invincible young trumpet player, and I had this amazing kind of gig, and I was touring the world, and it was great, and then bang, this thing
brought back down.
Yeah, and then I went back to that band, but I used to like, God man, I used to stand at the side of the stage having panic attacks before I went on stage. I would have panic attacks on stage, like properly. If anyone's ever had a panic attack, it feels like it can feel like you're gonna die. Yeah. So I was getting these like.
It feels like the world's crushing in on you, doesn't it? Yeah.
It was horrific. So I was getting these chest pains and these thumping heart and hypervent, not being able to breathe properly, and and that happened every night for probably years.
And did you naturally just grow out of that, or did you work through it somehow?
I just kind of, I guess it was like, this is all I could do to earn money. And actually it was a few years after that was the smashing trumpet incident. So that was all still related to that, I think, as well, because I was still I remember sitting on stage with a symphony orchestra in Glasgow. And and I think we were doing I think it might have been the BBC Scottish, and we were doing West Side Story symphonic dances in the first half. I think I might be remembering this wrong, but that was one of the pieces we were doing. I think there was a few pieces, and I played it really well. The gig went great, and then came on for the second half. No, I tell you a lie. It wasn't the orchestra. It was the SNO, and the first half was whatever it was. Played really well, and then when we went back on for the second half, and it was like the easier half. It's so weird. It was like just like a pops film music thing. So it was like Indiana Jones and all that, like fun stuff to play, I remember sitting on stage and I had one of the worst panic attacks I've ever had. And I was sitting, there was an audience there, the orchestra were around me, the conductor was putting this thing up and was like, I felt like I was going to faint. I felt like I was going to fall off my seat. I felt really, really awful. So I've definitely had my my fair share of anxiety. I as far as working through that went, I think I got to kind of probably quite an unhealthy state where I kind of expected it, So it was like the sound check would always be great. I'd always feel really good. I would always make sure I drank water and I'd eaten something and this, that, and the other. And then I guess I'd preconditioned myself as like, you're going to have a panic attack, But I think eventually, I think a little switch flicked in my head where I kind of said, okay, what's the worst that's going to happen? What's the worst thing that's going to happen? Okay, let's work back from that. Okay, so the worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to drop dead on stage, and it's going to be really embarrassing for everybody, and it's going to be really inconvenient, but you're dead, so you won't know about it. So that's like DEFCON 5 worst scenario, right? Okay, what's the next worst thing that could happen? Well, you could faint, you could throw up something. Okay, what's the consequence of that? Kind of nothing, really. You faint, okay, you might hurt yourself or you might break a trumpet or you might whatever. But actually, basically, eventually I took it back to a kind of thing. It's only music. It's only a gig. It doesn't really matter.
And that's a great way to think about it. Is that, but you internalize it in a way. You chatted with yourself and went through the steps and almost brought yourself out of it, like talking someone out of a situation.
I think so. And this is by no way me offering any advice to anyone. This is just like my personal experience and kind of how I dealt with it. Like how I dealt with it. And I think that's the upshot. I kind of dealt with it by kind of saying it's only music. It's not life and death. And tried to focus on the important things about music that I love. And I love playing the trumpet and I love making a nice sound, and I love the feeling when something works. And if something doesn't work or you split a note or whatever, it's never really the end of the world, especially if you've got I guess maybe quite a good track record of being able to do the gig. I think the more kind of not good behavior, the more kind of it's like money in the bank or something. The more leeway you've got in your overdraft as a trumpet player, if it's like people know that you're a good guy. People know you're a good guy, or people know that you generally can play well, and they're going to forgive you an off day.
Exactly, massively.
They're going to forgive you. So
like a lot of the other guys have said, when it's the biggest advice that we can give anyone, especially looking into going into professional music business, is practice hard, work hard, but be nice. Like,
I would almost put be nice as number one.
Be nice, practice hard. Yeah, no, you're exactly right.
It's so important. It's so important.
Yeah, it's there's no room, anyone watching here, there's no room for big-headedness or thinking you can outdo someone or anything like that. You're all there to play music together, and it's a massive lesson. So thanks so much for sharing that, Ryan. It really is. And I mean, for other people out there, when I used to suffer from dry mouth a lot. It would just go dry as soon as, that would be, maybe I'm unprepared or this or the chops didn't feel great. So I'm like, okay, anything could happen. The mouth goes dry, and then that actually makes it worse. So what I changed my mentality to, there's going to be some people that like what I do, and there's going to be some people that don't. So I'm just going to play to the best of my ability, and hopefully it'll be good enough for the guys listening and for mainly the guys behind me. Hopefully I do them justice, because I know they're going to be laying it down as much as I'm trying to.
Yeah, for sure, man. It's I think it's all about doing your best. Yeah. It's just all about doing your best. People, and again, I think I would much rather play in a band with kind of terrible musicians, that were really nice guys, and they were trying to improve, and they were just doing their best.
Yeah.
Than like a really amazing band full of just people that I didn't want to be around. The music might be great, but actually that would take away from the music for me.
Yeah.
It's attitude is everything.
Yeah, massively. And like you said, be nice. Attitude is everything. So, Wendy, to answer your question, Wendy said, how do I share this? Stuart Brooks wants to listen. I tried sharing the link on Facebook Messenger, so I hope Stuart got it. If not, we'll try and get it to him afterwards. So I just wanted to move on a little bit. I know time's getting on. I don't want to keep yourself too long. You have a beautiful family to get to as well. But I'd like to talk about Is it Triple?
Yes.
I'd love to talk about that. So how did that come about? I have a little clip here to play. Okay. So I'll play the clip, and then we'll have a bit of a chat about it. And for all our guys out there, I'm going to be asking Ryan a question of when he got this music, how did he approach practicing it to get it up to this standard? Because it's a great way when you take a look at the music, because it will be on the video as well. I can't wait to hear how he approached it, how he broke it down, because some of these lines are pretty tricky. Enjoy this. Love it. It's there's some tricky stuff in there, man. It's so tell me a little bit about Triple, and then we'll have a chat about the video.
So Triple, the name comes from Trevor, Ryan, Paul. So that's where there's three of us. So it's kind of a double meaning type thing. It came from, we did quite, I've known Trevor for years and years, and I've known Paul for years and years, and we all love playing together. And it was like, oh, we need to do something, and we all love, I kind of grew up on the scene in Scotland playing a lot of Latin American music. There was a lot of Cubans lived in Glasgow and Edinburgh.
Oh, really?
A lot of Latinos, a lot of Cubans, a lot of like Colombians and Argentinians. There was a real in the 90s and the early 2000s. There was such a big kind of Latin American music scene going on. There was loads of salsa clubs, and it was like really on vogue for a lot of years. And I played a lot of that music, and it was just the best. I had the best time, playing that music. It was just brilliant. It was so uplifting, and I loved it, and I really got into it. And I remember the very first time I played in one of those bands, I had no idea what was going on. I had literally no idea where beat one was. I was just like, what is going on? No idea. And then you kind of learn the vocabulary of the rhythms and the claves and the cascaras and all that stuff. But it takes time to learn that stuff, It's that stuff you need to study. But I was really lucky to have that experience. And Trevor and Paul had similar kind of experiences, I guess, growing up, but they certainly loved the music, and it felt like the right project for the three of us to do, because we knew we wanted to do something together. and we knew we wanted to do kind of some horn section stuff together. Subsequently, since setting up the triple band, we've done a few projects as a horn section for other people, which is really nice.
Amazing.
The triple horns. Yeah, so we basically booked a studio, and we all brought a tune along, and we just recorded them on the day. This is for the album, so we booked a day in the studio. We all brought a tune, rehearsed, recorded, done, and then we booked another day a month or two later and did the same thing, and then we had an album, you know. So it was a really great fun thing to do, you know. It was like turning up. It was great, you know, turning up to this session, playing this brand new music and having to kind of work through it and make it work, you know. But as far as that little video goes, at some point last year during lockdown, we decided to put the album, like we recorded this album in like 2017 or something, and never had the chance to put it out, and we were like, let's put the album out. So as part of putting the album out, we wanted to do some kind of promo-y, stupid little videos to basically promote the fact that we had this album coming out. So I wrote one that was Trevor's one. A trombone player wrote that one. Just shows he's a real unique. He's a guy to get on your to get on this program, man. Yeah. He's such a monster. But yeah, so we all wrote a little kind of 1 minute clip, just to kind of to give us a bit of publicity for the album, but also on top of that to give us something to practice for, you know. So like that one, like you say, it was pretty hard, you know, and the one Paul wrote was really hard as well. It was like there was nowhere to breathe. It was this kind of bop, kind of rhythm changes, Latin thing. It was pretty challenging, you know. And then I wrote something that was, you know, a bit stupid, and it was just fun. It was just fun to try and get it together, you know.
Yeah.
But certainly the process for me of playing something like that's for that one, I remember getting the chart through. I printed out the music, and I put the backing track that Trevor sent on, and I sight read through it one time at speed just to identify what I needed to work on. It turns out kind of all of it. So it was kind of a fun process. I quite like to do stupid shit like that sometimes, just, you know, it's like see how bad I am at this, you know, full pelt. So then I just spent a bit of time kind of really slowing it down, you know, playing it really slowly. You know, I think for that kind of thing, slow practice is much more efficient than doing it wrong a bit faster 10 times. Do it once correctly rather than 10 times wrong, and that once that you do it slowly correctly is going to be exponentially better than plowing through it
completely
faster than you're able to do it, you know. And so I just practiced it really slowly. There was definitely little bits that needed focused on more, so I would play them just super slow and steady.
Slow and steady, and then just ramping it up as you go along. Do you approach if you get to a studio and obviously you don't know what you're going to get, you open it? No. If you can hear any little whinging going on, if I get out of the way, you can see my
I gathered there was a little doggy.
I do apologize. She's sitting there going, "Can you please stop talking right now?" Anyway, we won't be too much longer anyway. But in the studio sense, when you get that book and you open it up, do you sort of just, you know, twiddle through some stuff? It's like, oh, that looks a bit tricky, and then boom, you just go for it, sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's I guess it's probably rare on like a sight reading studio session that you would get anything approaching that level of kind of reading difficulty. You know, it's not that it doesn't happen, but I guess it's quite rare. But if there's times where you open something up and there's something that you need to look at, then for me, definitely it's kind of playing it through really quietly and really slowly. Yeah. If I know that I'm not going to be able to nail that first time sight to speed, okay, I'm gonna look at this, you know. And yeah, if I can just look at it slowly a couple of times, that's gonna up the average of possibly getting it right, you know, at the time.
Preparing early in a way, isn't it? Just for what's up.
Yeah, so for sure have a look through, and it's like, If it all looks fine, great.
Yeah, they're the
Coffee
nice
time.
gigs. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, get there early, sit on fourth.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes they're harder though. They're tricky fingering
man.
sometimes. But
Fourth and third.
yeah,
'Cause
exactly. Yeah.
First and second are like two lead books, and third and fourth are like the kind of da da da, like all over the place sometimes, you know.
Exactly. Well, just before we end, I'd like to ask you. What's on your stand? What are you practicing right now?
I did a gig the other day, yesterday in Scotland, and if I'm doing a gig, I always put a stand in the car just in case.
Yeah.
So there's nothing on my stand at the moment. However, the stuff that I have been playing at the moment, let's see. I've got all my stuff down here. I've been looking at this a little bit.
Oh, okay. Never seen that one before.
This is quite good. It's kind of like just things like patterns like that.
Oh, lovely. Yeah.
Which are kind of, so Nicholas Slaminski book. It's kind of like, it's pretty much every interval you can imagine and every permutation you can imagine. It's pretty cool. It's really hard. I can't really play a lot of stuff in the book, so it's good to kind of try and do a bit of that at times. So that's one thing that I have genuinely been looking at recently.
It's amazing.
And the other thing that I've been looking at is I've been revisiting and trying to learn some Thelonious Monk tunes. So I've been doing a bit of that as well. So yeah, that's the kind of stuff that's been kind of in my line of sight recently, as it were.
Oh, that's great. Well, thanks so much for sharing that. That's awesome. Both of those books I haven't heard of before, so that's incredible. Just quickly before I ask you a bit of quick fire sessions, anything in the future? Anything coming up?
Well, funnily you mentioned Triple. We've actually got a gig this Sunday.
Amazing.
That's also a live stream that Pete Long is putting on. He runs a jazz series in Croydon. So if you'll be able to find it easily enough on, I think it's.
I'll put a link on this video as well.
Perfect. So that's on Sunday, and we've got a few Triple things coming up. We've got the Jazz Cafe coming up in June, I think, and we've got first of September. Or the first of, this is terrible. I should really have this in my head. It's either the 1st of August or the 1st of September in Ronnie Scott's. We're doing a gig there. So there's a few of that kind of stuff going on. Excitingly, I've started recording a big band record.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So actually, I'll send you a little sneaky peek at a couple of things that I've been working on. So I've been writing a load of new arrangements, and I've been revisiting some old big band charts that I've written over the years. So I've nearly finished a tune called Doctor Stage, which is on my second solo jazz trumpet album, and I've got a big band. In fact, funnily enough, that tune originally started as a big band composition, and then I did it as a small band thing for my record, but actually it's a big band chart.
Oh, there you go.
So that's nearly done, and I'm going to release that as a kind of video, and I'm going to try and record a load of stuff and put it out and do some videos. I've nearly finished an arrangement of Libertango as well.
Oh, that's a great tune.
Which will be fun and hilarious, and it's got a double B at the end of it.
Love your double B's are massive.
It's because I can't really play double C's, man.
Oh,
so
get out!
B's are...
It's double B is my nemesis. B flat, fine. C, fine.
Oh, really?
Get fine on that. B.
Really?
And then I listen to you play a B, and it's like I get so jealous. But yeah,
so there's that those two tunes that are nearly finished, and I'm the long-term plan is to get a big band album out, because I've never released it. I've had a big band for 20 years and I've never released a big band.
That is
album.
insane, but I can't wait.
I need to do it.
So on that, to find the triple album that you guys did, to find this upcoming big band album, where are people going to go?
Well, the triple album is out on Ubuntu Music.
Okay.
Which is a really great jazz label. But you'll find that if you go to Facebook and look for Triple or Bandcamp, and look for Triple, and it's Trypl. It's really easy to find, and we're on Facebook and all that stuff. As far as the big band album goes, like I say, I'm initially going to release some YouTube videos of the tunes, and then I'm going to eventually release the album, but that'll be further down the line. Probably this year, the remainder of this year, will probably aim to release a few videos of the tunes as I finish them. So like I say, the first tune, Doctor Stage, is basically done. I just need to
amazing. Can't wait to hear it. It's going to be awesome.
And all that sort of stuff.
If are you teaching at the moment? Can people approach you for lessons?
For sure. Yeah, anyone can approach me for lessons. Just send me. The best thing to do is send me a Facebook private message, probably.
So probably over at Ryan Quigley Music page?
Either that or my personal page. Either or.
Cool. Fine. There you go, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, very, very happy. If people want to hear more of this blabbering, please get in touch.
I love the blabbering. I could chat to you all night. So and I can't wait to do it one day with a beer in our hands, and we'll just sit around and chat, or wine.
Hopefully over the summer.
Yeah, it'd be great, I think. So just quick few quick fire sessions that I like doing.
Okay.
Say,
do I get points? Is there points?
No, because I might stump you. You never know. Sometimes I do. It's hard to lock down sometimes. So could you give me 3 inspirational albums?
3 inspirational albums. Yes. Let me think for 1 second. 3 inspirational albums. I love putting on Vince Mendoza, Nights on Earth. Is just a very beautiful album of just very beautiful music and very beautiful arrangements. So that's definitely up there. The other album I love to listen to is the Bach cello suites.
Oh, very nice.
Just they're so kind of grounding. And there's a recording that's really amazing, and I can't remember the name. I'll try and remember his name before we leave, but it's a really, really good version of the cello suites. I think he's a Hungarian cellist. Anyway, so that's something that I kind of revisit quite a lot. And a third inspirational album, or
just something that gets you going.
Probably Miles Davis. Miles Davis plus 13, I think it's called. It's the album with My Ship on it. Miles Ahead. Miles Ahead.
Yeah.
Miles Ahead. So I went blank there for a second.
That's
it's such an amazing record, man.
Yeah.
And if I could have a fourth, I would say pretty much anything by Maria Schneider.
Oh yeah, what an inspirational lady that lady she is. That's amazing. Thank you. So what was I going to say?
Esteban Vardal.
Esteban. There you go. You said you'd have it as well.
Istvan. Esteban, okay. Which is Hungarian for Steve. Esteban Vardai. Vardai.
Okay.
It's a really, really fantastic version of the Bach cello suites.
Oh, that's
Highly
amazing.
Recommend it.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to go check that out. If you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice as a musician, what would it be?
Probably don't worry. Don't worry, everyone's going to be fine.
Yeah.
It's going to be all right. Don't worry so much.
Yeah, and I mean, hearing your life, yeah, that's a great one to have. It feeds through so much, man. It really is. And just to finish it off, could you just tell us about maybe a funny story or a favorite gig that you've done?
I'm terrible at jokes and funny stories.
No, I don't mean like a joke. I mean like say something happened on stage.
There was a funny thing happened yesterday. Actually.
Okay, there we go. Perfect.
So the gig yesterday, for people who weren't listening at the time, because I came on briefly and kind of said, look, this is my life today. This is what's happening. So it was the Fratellis, which is a really cool Scottish kind of rock band, who are just lovely and brilliant, and they've got a new album out, so I'm very lucky to be involved with that. But they were doing the James Corden show, and because it's the James Corden show, it was quite a big production. So it started off, the band were playing, and it looked like it was like in a little small room, and then it all kind of opens up, and there's this big brass band behind us, kind of like doing their thing. So it was quite a big spectacle, and it was like a one camera shot for the whole song. So we had to do it 470 times, one of those. But in fact, we didn't. We rehearsed it that much, and then we recorded it like 3 times or something. Anyway, but there was this Chinese kid, and it was like an amateur brass band. It was all like uni kids and all that. And it was this kid from Shanghai, in the brass band, who was over in Glasgow studying, and he came up to me and said, "Oh, can I have a photo with you? You're all over the place. I'm a big fan." And I was like, "Yeah, man, of course." And kind of, "That's really nice. And what's your name?" And blah blah blah. Where you from? Shanghai. "Oh, I've been to Shanghai." We had a little bit of nice chat. But I subsequently found out that he had already gone up to a guy who was the driver for the band, who is probably about a foot shorter than me, about 10 or 15 years older than me, but is also bald. And he went up to him and said, "Oh, can I have a photo with you? I'm such a big fan." Blah, blah, blah. He thought he was me. He thought he was the trumpet player.
He thought that you drove a bus. Second job.
Yeah. So yeah, he just bless him.
That's amazing.
All those baldies kind of look the same, I guess.
Well, we do, don't we? I mean,
we really do tonight with the jumper, man.
Well, we do, yeah. It's great. It's like long lost brothers. It's great.
So,
well, Ryan, I can't thank you enough, and I can't thank my guys, the guys, for joining us and asking your questions. Thanks very much. What a life you've led, Ryan. I
would definitely say I've been so lucky. I've been so lucky. And I'm lucky to be doing what I'm doing. I'm lucky to have had the gigs that I've had, because I don't really deserve a lot of them. It's just a lot of it's right place, right time. There's so many great trumpet. I mean, we all know who they are, but I'm really seriously, I'm so lucky to be doing what I'm doing. And if it lasts, it lasts. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But I've had such a lovely time being a trumpet player. And I'm very, very grateful for it. So
hearing your humbleness is amazing as well. And don't ever downplay you as an inspirer yourself, because there's a lot of people that listen to you and move forward with that. Just like Derek did for you, you're doing for other people. For sure. And always remember that.
That's a very nice thought, if that's the case. And a tenth of that, that's very nice.
Yes. So. Thank you. So Derek Watkins is obviously, thank you for sharing those stories about Derek, because awe-inspiring as well. And Wendy, thank you for tuning in as well. We can't wait to hear you gigging again, playing again.
For sure, man.
For the guys out there, go check out James Corden. Go check Ryan out. Go check out Ryan's YouTube. And go check out his Facebook music site as well. Approach him for lessons. He's an absolute legend. As you heard, he's dealt with so much in his life, and he probably knows how to help you out as well. So
you can certainly try.
Exactly.
Can certainly try.
It's worst comes to worst. Sometimes the best way to learn is getting with someone and chatting, just like we've just done now. And sometimes I've had lessons like that. I've booked a lesson and I've chatted to someone for an hour and a half, and I've learned more on that than picking up a trumpet. So honestly, guys, go and do it. Ryan, thank you so much for giving your time up, mate. I wish you and your family.
Thank you very much for having me, man. It's been fun. It's
been an absolute pleasure. I wish you and your family all just to stay safe, and I can't wait to see you guys once everything starts lifting and gigs start coming back. So everyone else out there, thank you so much for joining us. From me, I'll see you later, and I'm sure Ryan appreciates you being here with us as well. So stay safe in your practice rooms, and I love your work. See you later, everyone.
Beautiful. All right, man. Take care.